Hi, it's Chris Titley here. As part of the Sub 11 Uncovered series, I'm joined by Damian Vasta, CEO and founder of Snip. Damien, thanks so much for being in Brisbane and being part of this podcast series.
Yeah, it's a pleasure, Chris. I'm always in Brisbane, home in Brisbane, born and bred in Brisbane, and Snip was founded and has been very proudly Brisbane since about 2013.
Let's go back to 2013, the ideation of Snip, and a little bit about your background and how it came to starting your own business.
Well, I think it was almost by accident that Snip became a business that we now are really proud of. It wasn't certainly the idea that Snip would become this bill payments platform that we like to think is universal for bill payers in Australia today. It was really around the mobile focus of e-commerce and m-commerce at the time that drew me to Snip, and it was the idea of how can we make the e-commerce experience better on a mobile device, because all that we had at the time was an e-commerce experience modified for a mobile device, and it was not really making it that conducive to a really good mobile experience. So yet we were seeing so much emergence of mobile activity, especially around payments. And we were really trying to make Snip this really cool mobile app to allow you to pay for things, especially in that retail space initially. And we realised that we could probably do something that was unique in that it was a QR code execution of a payment. And it had only previously really been done well in China through WeChat and Alipay using QR codes. A lot of people in Brisbane and Australia thought that we were going back in time because QR codes have been around for years, but they were always used just to link you to a website or a YouTube video. And we wanted to use the QR code to affect a really cool, smooth, native mobile payment experience. And we thought that the best way to do that was through purchases in a retail environment. Was only after we had done some work with a big retailer that we realised that often big retailers are not omni-channel ready, and so the idea of moving into a proper m-commerce world wasn't really something that they focused as a priority. And what we thought was actually what we really want to do is use this mobile payment experience to solve a problem that no one had really solved, and that is around bill payments.
And QR codes, as you mentioned, in sort of 2013, 14, 15, how was the reception early on from that compared to sitting here in 2024 when 99% of the population knows what a QR code is?
It's funny you should say that, because I remember we were compared unfavourably to other payments companies because we had started out life offering billers this really unique and what I consider to be user-friendly method of payment via point and shoot on the QR code on a bill. And people said, that's, old school. And I said, well, if you see what we do, we use the technology a bit differently. And the QR code contains all the data from a bill so that it's presented digitally, and all you have to do is press pay. As opposed to going into a site where you've got to still enter a lot of data manually. So a lot of clicks. We said, no, let's just eliminate that. Let's use everything that we can in a QR code data string to actually present a digital bill and give someone this seamless, quick experience, just like that they were buying through eBay or Amazon. But it was still the idea of a QR code back then was seen as being a little bit antiquated. Come 2019, 2020 with COVID and QR codes started to be used everywhere, the acceptance of QR codes had this renaissance where people were saying, well, QR codes can be used for anything. And you'll see now that, most restaurants offer table ordering with the QR code. There's a whole lot of execution of QR codes even in supermarkets.
And advertising now, I see on some stadiums.
Absolutely. So QR codes have gone full circle. The irony of it is we don't have the heavy reliance on QR code as the method in which we offer payment through our app like we did. and that's been a big change in our business.
Let's talk about that. I remember the early days. We did have some city councils come on and some utility providers maybe have you pay by Snip on the bills. The business has transitioned a lot from that, as you mentioned. Can you talk about how that phase went from where you were then to where you are now?
Yeah, well, I think that I'll tell a story that I think most startup founders probably find themselves in the same position, that when you think you've got this great concept and great idea, you just assume that everyone will see the same way as you do and they will adopt it because you've got this great solution. Why wouldn't it be something that people would want? Unfortunately, when you're dealing with large organisations and those organisations almost have a needs versus wants matrix where they say, if I don't absolutely have to have this, then why do I want to do it? And we were presenting what I considered to be the best payment option out there from a user experience point of view, from a fast payment and collection point of view. But the way for us to get traction was to get the largest possible billers. And those largest possible billers are very bureaucratic. So there's a lot of process and there's a lot of decision making that needs to happen in the affirmative for you to get them to agree to use your new payment method. Add to that, there's a need for those large organisations to feel as though they own that brand. And the minute that you take them away from their brand to your brand, they feel as though they've lost that engagement. So we were trying to advocate for this universal QR code payment method that we could get on every bill, even though it took us about 2.5 years to get about 5 billers. We realised that we couldn't get billers to change their mind quickly enough to give our customers what I consider to be a critical mass of bill payment opportunities. So that was the pivot moment for us, is that we said we have built great technology. We know we've got a great payment experience. But what we've got is this massive barrier between us and our customers, and that is the billers having to say yes.
Yep, you got people wanting to pay. You've got the product, but then
Yes.
you've got the people that actually provide the bills going,
Do we need this?
Yep.
Why should we do this?
Yep.
So we had to find a way where we could get our technology to the end user without being completely dependent upon a biller being agreeable to it. And then we had a little dalliance with working around the Australia Post bill pay system, and that was like dealing with 10 government departments in one. Took us a long time to get enough progress to really make that work. And that's not meant to be a disparaging remark about Australia Post. They're just a large organisation.
Yep.
And it's really
Many
hard to get
stakeholders.
things. Yeah,
Yep.
absolutely.
Yep.
And then I think we worked out, well, even if we did get Australia Post, which represents probably about 1,000 of the largest household billers in Australia, it's still a small subset of the BPAY biller market,
Yep.
which represents about 70,000 billers nationally. So we explored the concept of how could we actually become part of BPAY, rather than we'd always had in our mind as a startup, as a disruptor, you have to take on the competition. I think that's a really important point, because there's this mindset that if you do want to be a disruptive influence in any space and you want to change the paradigm, you have to actually do everything in opposition to what's currently being done. And I don't think that should be the case, because what often happens is you've got components that work, but there's a recipe that you need to put together to make it better, utilising what's already there. So we saw that the BPAY collective made sense. There was this universal payment acceptance that the banks had initiated, and it's the first time the banks had really worked cooperatively to say, we will all accept BPAY. So we wanted to find out, how could we get inside that gate? And how do we become part of that? How do we offer that to our customers? Because we don't then need to go to any biller. BPAY's already there. So that was a process of a lot of exploration, a lot of discovery, a lot of accreditation requirements, a lot of compliance. And eventually our partners Indu sponsored us into the BPAY scheme, which saw us become what they call a payer institution member, the first of our kind in our space to become a payer institution member, which we're very proud of. So that means we're able to offer BPAY as part of the BPAY scheme, and we can allow our customers now to pay any bill that offers BPAY. Now that was probably about 2019 that went live. So, we've been in the market for a long time. Obviously, starting out was a little bit scratchy, and then our first biller in the QR code sense was Toowoomba Regional Council, who are very progressive, and that was end of 2015. And so we spent a couple of years trying to grow that market. So by 2019, we said, well, why don't we just do what we're doing with BPAY and allow our customers to make their choice? And that's what we did. And so that was a step change in our business. Big pivot.
Yep.
But a pivot not in terms of our end offering, but a pivot in terms of our go-to-market strategy.
True. Yeah. And then moving forward from that, it's well known now that Snip has a relationship with American Express. Can you talk about that relationship?
Yeah. Well, the advent of the BPAY membership allowed us to offer a couple of key household and essential bill payments that we wouldn't otherwise be able to offer if we had gone directly to those billers. So if you think about it, a lot of the government bills, a lot of your household bills all offer BPAY, and invariably those billers don't offer American Express as a direct payment option.
Is that because of the cost, do you think, to the biller, or is it just the way that there's too many already, or it's just an easier...
I think there's a similarity in terms of what I experience, and that is we haven't got enough people really demanding that we have Amex, so why should we do it?
Yep.
So you've got to find that point of inflection where a biller, whether it's a government department or a big corporate, says we have to do this.
Yep.
And it's really hard to get that because unless there's a minister banging on your door or there's a CEO who says, why aren't we doing this? It's hard to get the bureaucracy to all move in sort of sync with you.
Yep.
So what we found was that American Express had been accepted in probably about 500 billers nationally as a direct payment option. But that meant, if you think about it, that's 65,000, 70,000 plus billers that didn't accept Amex. So Amex recognised that, and especially in the personal bill payment space. So we found that we were drawing a lot of customers specifically around things like paying their tax bills, using an Amex and earning points. And so that drew Amex to us, and the opportunity came for us to become a strategic partner.
So that was a consumer piece of data, I suppose, that you're watching or just seeing going, oh, did someone just
it's funny that
pay their tax bill in Amex? Oh,
well,
strange.
It was Amex themselves that saw it.
Yeah. Yep.
Amex saw this growing volume and said, if we could give you a strategic merchant rate, you could become even more competitive, even more attractive. And in comparison, Amex is very much about there's this, I suppose, assumption in the market that Amex is always more expensive. But everyone knows Amex is more expensive, but there's also better points gratification generally. So people have accepted that. But if you can give them a better degree of points gratification, but not necessarily charge them any more, then you're going to be hyper attractive. And that's what they saw. So we were able to offer American Express at the same rate as Visa and MasterCard, and that meant that people saw Amex as really good value with Snip, and that was because of the strategic merchant rate that we were offered. And so we then parlayed that partnership into a growth phase through a lot of their marketing opportunities to their database, introducing them, giving them a little incentive to start with Snip, and that has really, I suppose, delivered us constant growth with American Express customers over many years now. So we've found that relationship it's like any relationship, it has its ups and downs because, there's always a demand from either party to have a better deal.
Yep.
But we've worked really well with them, and we think, we both value each other's contribution.
I'm interested to know about the points segment that you mentioned about the loyalty points. Australia seems to be, and maybe, I don't know where we are in the world in terms of points acquirers, and people love a balance and they love high numbers.
Yes.
And they love rewards. I mean, Have you gone elsewhere in the world to see whether that works, and where are Australians in that cycle, I suppose, in terms of that points accumulation and loyalty programs, etc.?
Yeah, look, it's a good point, Chris. I've actually done a little bit of work around that value proposition for consumers and businesses in the US. The demand is absolutely there. The opportunity isn't. A lot of the reason for that is that there is this, I suppose, belief in the US that there should never be a surcharge passed on to the payer. It should always be absorbed by a merchant or by a biller.
Yep.
So we know that that still exists in Australia, but there's also an acceptance that if you want to make a choice in terms of how you pay, there is often a fee associated with that, and people accept that because they're getting something in return. They're either getting access to a card type that they want to use because it's either a type that they have access to, they've got credit lines, they want their points, whatever reason that they want to have that payment option, they accept that there might be a fee associated with that. It's not the same in other parts of the world. Europe and the US, there's the idea of interchange fees being passed on to a consumer at the point of purchase or point of payment is foreign. So I believe that there is an opportunity to actually give people that choice. And that's really what I think the essence of Snip is about. It's not about saying you have to pay a fee. It's about the fact that you have a choice if you want to use a particular payment method, and here is what the cost is. And so much so that we've always tried to make sure that no one can compare us unfavourably on fees to any other provider, to their bank, because we have a free service if you want to use your bank account. So that costs you absolutely nothing. So you can sign up to Snip, use all of the features that we have, and there's plenty of features around scheduling payments, setting up instalments, doing recurring direct debits, those types of things. And the convenience of Snip is unparalleled, we believe, in terms of that. And we've built some really, really cool tech around making sure that payments become such a small part of your life in terms of time, because no one wants to spend time paying something they don't want to have to pay at all. So what we said was, give yourself time back by using Snip. And if you want to use a bank account, pay nothing for it. So we've really wanted to make sure that that is an option for everyone. At the same time, if you want to pay with a card, you can. And there's a fee associated with that. But guess what you get in return? You get access to your credit and you get all your points. And people love that.
I'm interested to know from a small business point of view in Australia, there's a lot of people that do provide bills, whether it's tradies or whether it's someone that comes to your house or whether there's other various things that they send you, framers, etc. The importance of being paid fast, the importance of being paid on time, and obviously, when it comes to things like BPAY, there's long numbers, etc., and things go missing. How important is it to get that payment quick and easy in the method that you want to choose to pay with?
Well, I'll answer that by talking about what we're really proud of that we just went live with in November last year. And that is, we talked about how we went to direct billers. We talked about how we then went and offered BPAY. As I said, we're very tech focused. We're a payments company, but we probably consider ourselves more of a build tech company, and we make billing better. And by doing that, we've made the process faster and quicker for the bill payer. And that's been our focus from day one. What we've said is the bill payer should have the choice as to how they pay that bill, even if the biller says this is the only way you can pay that bill. So that is the paradigm shift. It's always been accepted that you get to pay how your biller or your bank tells you to pay. We've said no. We've said, why should that be the case? Those restrictions no longer apply with Snip. So if your invoice says pay this bank account, there's no option for using a card. Snip says, if you want to pay with a card, no problem. What we realised was that as much as there's 70,000 billers nationally offering BPAY, there's 2 million small businesses in Australia that don't. So we needed to make sure that we weren't just allowing people to pay certain bills with Snip. We wanted to pay every bill with Snip. And our vision has always been to allow every Australian to pay every bill using any payment method on their terms. So that's been it. We've been really working hard for the last 5 or 6 years, ever since we realised that BPAY was our way to our growth path. we wanted to make sure that that wasn't where it ended, it was where it started. And so in November, we launched our payments to non-BPAY billers. That means that you can upload an invoice that you get from your tradie or your pool cleaner or your gardener, and in Snip, we will read that bill, we will approve that biller, and we will enable that, assuming it's not in a prohibited industry, but assuming that that's a legitimate bill from a legitimate business, you can pay it however you want. And that means that...
It opens up to convenience for someone that goes, I can't pay by Amex. Now I can.
Absolutely.
Yep.
So we have now got people paying every single household bill, every single business bill with their Amex. Now, that's not for everyone, but some people love that idea of that rapid and massive points accumulation. And why that's important to us is because we no longer have to say to people, pay certain bills one way and pay certain bills with Snip. It's now everything. And that's really critical too for us in that we have wanted to make sure from the very beginning that that choice is there for customers to be able to pay, not that they're dictated to as to how that bill gets paid. The best part about that is the business doesn't pay anything for that service, and the business doesn't even know necessarily that the customer used Snip to pay because they're getting paid the way, because we allow customers to pay us and we pay them. Yep. So we act as effectively that middle leg of the transaction where the customer agrees under their terms and conditions that they're paying us and we agree to pay their bill. And that's now why we've processed, around about just under $2 billion worth of bill payments.
Right. Wow.
And we're approving around about 70 new small businesses every day for payments. We've now since November approved about 8,500 small businesses. So only about 2 million to go.
And on that note, the future, now you've articulated the vision very well, Damien. Put the hat on in 12 months' time, we come back and we repeat this podcast. Where would you like to see the business?
Well, I think what we've done now is allow Australian bill payers to make those choices without the biller getting in their way. So that is great, and that's something that we've really always strived. We've always strived to be able to create that opportunity for choice for customers to pay their bills. But if you think about it, we've now got a lot of customers paying billers in a way that the biller doesn't even realise. So our opportunity is now to go back. We've already solved the problem of how to pay a bill for a customer.
Yep.
But we can go back to businesses who don't even realise that they're getting paid by customers using Snip and offer them the opportunity to send that invoice to them directly. So we have built, in beta right now, a full biller web portal for businesses to be able to both upload all of their invoices and pay in one payment using whatever payment method they want.
Yep.
But by the end of the year, we expect to have the opportunity for every business to be able to sign up as a Snip biller, because we will have full accounting software integration for those businesses to be able to connect so that the reconciliation process is automated. And we will have businesses be able to come to Snip as a Snip biller and offer their customers the ability to receive their bill straight into their Snip app by push notification.
Right. Okay. So then you're housing bills and convenience for
Correct.
people as well, right?
We like to think of it as a closed loop.
Yep.
If you think about it, if a business is sending you a bill in the very place where all your payment information is securely stored,
why not send it there? Yeah.
Well, there's no break in transmission. Right now, we get a bill in the mail, we get a bill in our inbox.
Yep.
There's a process that you have to undertake which requires time. What does that mean? It means that you don't pay it quickly. What does that mean for a small business? It means that they're waiting on cash.
Which is important.
And
right.
it really impacts cash flow.
Yep. Yep.
So if you think about it, we probably focused on the big end of town to get rapid consumption of our payment option by getting the biggest billers to send the most bills. But the sweet spot for us is actually where businesses actually do need this to make sure that their payments are made on time. 92% of our customers pay our bill within the time frame required in terms of the due date.
Yep.
Compared to the national average, which is under 70%. Our average payment is made 9 days before the due date, whereas the national average is 14 days after. all that tells us is that if you make payments easy to make, people pay on time. Most truant payments because it's
And I imagine there's a huge business cost as well. Like
Absolutely.
maybe some like reminders, teams that actually ring you up
Correct.
and say you know, or a text message or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
To say that you're late or your bill's overdue by 7 days. Please make payment now. That's
Absolutely.
time,
Huge.
money. Yeah.
Well, if you think about it, if you're a tradesman,
Yep.
the time that you're spending chasing up payments
Could be billable.
could be billable time,
Yep.
or it's time that you've got to put aside after you've finished a long day's work
Yep.
to chase up invoices.
That makes sense. Yeah.
And for us, we wanted to make sure that we can allow a easy payment to be made. There's a whole lot of technology out there that allows a business to send out an invoice on the fly, and that's all great, except making the payment at the other end for the customer isn't great. It's clunky. It's always been clunky because it's never been about how the payment gets made. It's how the invoice gets sent. Well, we've already solved the payment end. That's what we started out our life doing. So now we're sort of retrofitting the biller solution so that the payment can be made quickly because the invoice has been sent to the very place where payments are made.
Yep.
So if you've got that closed loop where billers are sending you invoices and you're being able to pay them because you've got Apple Pay set up and you can double click just like you're buying a loaf of bread at the supermarket, which is what Snip allows.
And there's my rates and there's my
You can
orders,
pay
everything.
everything.
Yeah.
But you don't have to pay it straight away. The best part about Snip is that we don't require you to pay on the spot, but you can manage it. So you can say, well, that's not due for a month, but I'll set it up now for when the due date is near, and I'll pay it then. So that I don't have to do without the money for a month, but I also don't want to pay late because A, I don't like paying late, it's just not me, or B, I don't want to get a late payment penalty.
Yep.
So Snip is about bill management and about admin that otherwise takes your time. So I think from a consumer point of view, we've ticked a lot of those boxes. And now our challenge is to make sure that we can really, I suppose, appeal to the business community to say, why don't you give this as a payment option to your customers? Because we are very confident that you'll find your payments get made quicker. And that's really
a huge difference. Yeah. Awesome. Damien, I think we'll leave it there. Thank you so much for giving the listeners out there an understanding of Snip, the creation of Snip, the early days, the pivots of the business to where you are now in terms of the volumes of payments and where you want to be in terms of the portal and the closed loop. I really do congratulate you on what you've achieved and really looking forward to catching up again.
Thanks, Chris. It's a real pleasure, and I appreciate your wise counsel, because someone with your experience in both advisory markets and fintech, it's always good to hear your feedback too. So thanks.
Thank you.